Christine Hines is a social worker and an author who has been working in the field for 10 years and has recently started a life coaching practice called Destination Calm. Her book, Brewing Success, Grounds for Change, is a gentle and thoughtful guide that blends everyday coffee moments with powerful self-help insights.
Welcome to De-Stress 302. I'm your host, Alena, and today we're here with
Christine Hines, Destination Calm.
Yep. And can you tell us about your mental health journey?
Sure. So my mental health journey, I want to say it started when I was in my early 20s. And I believe at that time I wasn't actually prepared to help myself fully in my mental health journey. But it definitely started in my early 20s. By the time I hit 25 to 30, that's when I actually started to do the self-work within myself. A lot of that took place with me getting my undergrad degree and the people that I came in contact with. And from there, I was able to work on myself and focus on myself. And that's kind of where the social worker took effect for me.
Mm-hmm. And what was it exactly that inspired you to become a social worker?
So exactly what inspired me was I actually have a autistic son, and when he was diagnosed with autism, the amount of support that I received, I wouldn't been able to do it without the social workers that was involved, the therapist that was involved, and for me to see the progress that he's made with all these supports, that inspired me to want to help others as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Would you like to talk about what it is like, your experiences raising your son with autism?
So my son is actually 17 years old. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. So it has been a long journey for him with his autism. I want to say that he started talking when he was 8. He said his first words when he was 8. For me as a new parent, finding out that my son was diagnosed with autism and everything, I actually, at that time, I didn't have a lot of information on autism. I remember going to the library a couple of times and doing research. He was seen by Child Find. And they actually diagnosed him with it. He's now in the Delaware Autism Program, which is a very amazing program for autistic students and even their parents. They have a lot of workshops with autism and behavioral health. You notice a lot of kids with autism and behavioral health goes hand in hand. So they have a lot of resources, workshops there, and it has, every time he's reached his milestone, it has been amazing. Like, bring me to tears, amazing. But it is an uphill battle with, being that support system. And plus, now you have to have a support system in place as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like you said, with not having a lot of information, it definitely is still something that I'm familiar with, the fact that there's not that much common knowledge about autism and what it looks like to provide support for
Mm-hmm.
someone with autism.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you have any advice for parents who are still kind of new to understanding their child with autism?
I would say always do your research. Do your research, and also make sure you are able to, first of all, we have to distinguish from a child who has autism and a child who does not have diagnosis, right? Make sure that you are not putting too much expectations on them. We don't want any child with any developmental disabilities, the goal is always try to keep them at their age group and everything. However, when you're helping someone with autism, a child with autism, make sure you are also catering to their needs as well. Not what you're expecting to see, what you want to see, but to their needs as well. And a lot of times I think that's kind of where we had problems. I have 3 kids. So, I have 2 other kids as well, and I had to learn that he's going to have to learn things a little differently. Where I might only took 2 steps with my girls, I might have to take 6 steps with him, and that's okay. So, yeah. Patience and support systems is a must.
What is one thing you wish more people understood about disability?
So I just want to tell a quick story very fast. I took my son to a specialist, right? And he's being seen for stuff, and the lady starts talking to him like he's a baby. Now, remind you, he's 17 years old, and she's talking to him as a baby. And I had to say to her, you don't have to talk to him like that and everything. I think that, especially with autism and some other developmental disabilities, I don't think that people sometimes see that they are capable. That's why we really have to start integrating a little bit more and everything. Just because someone has a disability does not mean that they're not worth the conversation or they're not worth the second look and everything. And so I think, one, I'm going to say it again, we need to educate ourselves. And if we have questions, we need to ask. Okay.
Yeah. I can definitely also see the value in like specific care and attention, because even with one of my own friends, they talk about the line between, someone having too high expectations of them, and it's unreasonable for them. And then also they give stories of when, they're underestimated and they're treated like a little kid when they really shouldn't have to be. And really, the fine line of it's about understanding where they can come from. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why a lot of programs that someone will go into, it's person centered. It's catered to their needs and how they want to be treated. So it's person centered.
What does your day-to-day work look like?
So on a day-to-day, I have about 20 clients that I see. Either I'm providing therapy for them, follow-up therapy for them, or I'm just doing wellness checks just to make sure they have everything that they need. Especially last week when it was really hot, we wanted to make sure our elder clients had water, they were in the air conditioning units and stuff like that. Also, I like to make sure that they do have their medication. With social work does come a lot of coordination of care. For people who can't set doctor's appointments for themselves, you might have to help them set a doctor's appointment, contact a pharmacy, just to make sure that they're getting their medication. So on a day-to-day basis, I am actually trying to make sure that all their social determinants of health needs are being met.
Can you share a story, without names of course, where social work made a powerful difference in someone's mental health?
So I do have a story of a gentleman, and this was about 10 years ago when he came to the facility that I worked at. He didn't have any family support, and his mental health diagnosis caused him to have a form of delusion. He was a little paranoid, so getting information from him was really kind of hard to do. So in the process of us helping him, kind of trying to coordinate, we were able to contact a daughter in California. He hadn't seen his daughter, I want to say, in about 12 years. But she was in California, she was in college. We were able to contact her. We were able to get her to Delaware. First, he didn't really recognize her, but then after a while, he started to remember. She was able to help him get on medication, and this was 10 years ago. So as of now, he is ready to graduate from getting an accounting degree. He has a place, very compliant with his meds, and just bought a new car. So he's doing really well. Yeah.
What barriers do you see people face when trying to get mental health help?
I think that a lot of people they still think that it's a stigma around mental health, where they might feel ashamed or they might even be scared to ask for help. I think that is one big barrier, for at least for someone who knows that something might not be right and they need more support. So sometimes I feel like they do get a little scared to reach out, with being afraid that someone would judge them, family, friends, and they might not have as much support. Yeah.
How do you help someone who doesn't believe that they need help?
Well, the first thing you definitely want to do is make sure you are taken care of. Your mental health is taken care of, because being a support system and a caregiver to someone who has a mental health disorder, it does impact you as well. And you definitely want to always provide like some supportive, active listening, letting them express how they feel and communicate how they feel. Unfortunately, some people are still not ready to go to that next step. And that's why I say you have to make sure that you take care of yourself. Because when you're supporting someone, it's so easy to say, look, you need to do this. Like, come on, try this and try that and everything. Because you see something in them that they may not see in themselves at that time. So with that being said, you do have to wait till they are actually ready, because when they are ready for whatever treatment that they need, then it will be more effective when they decide that they're ready. So you just have to continue to just provide support to them. Mm-hmm.
And how has your perspective of mental health changed since you started in this field?
So since I've started in this field, I've did different positions, from inpatient treatment facility, outpatient in the community, group homes. I've done a lot, and I still see that it is a barrier right now. However, when I enter into the field, in the one facility that I worked at, I'm like, these people they're doing really well. Like, we have a system going on. But as I moved around into different fields, I realized that we still need the education out there. We still need the community support out there.
How would you suggest that someone cope with being diagnosed with a mental health disorder?
Well, first thing you definitely always want to do is seek support. But one of the most important components about that also is educating yourself on your diagnosis, so you can be able to explain to someone, listen, this is the type of support I really need right now. So I definitely think that, educating yourself is very important in seeking professional help, and also relying on your support system as well. Yes.
What are some reliable sources that someone should look to if they wanted to do research on different mental health disorders?
Okay. So Delaware actually has a lot of resources. You have NAMI Delaware, that they have support groups. They have housing assistance as well. They do have therapists there that provide counseling. Then you also have 211. You can call there, and when you call there, you can communicate to them like exactly what is going on right now, and they will refer you to other resources, housing included. You also have like Brandywine Counseling, you have Connexio Care. So there is a lot of resources, and I can make sure that you guys have the resource packet here, but there is a lot of resources in Delaware for people.
Yeah. How does stigma affect how people view mental health?
Like I said, I think that this is still that stigma that people have, or sometimes they might be ashamed to admit that they do have a mental health disorder. And I think with that, sometimes people don't seek out treatment until it's crisis mode and everything. And I do think that the minute you can when your body, right, is trying to tell you something and everything. So, if the minute that happens, it's definitely good to reach out to support and everything. Now, this generation is completely different than how it was, let's say, in the 80s, okay? Where a lot of people kept it in. And it just build, and then they decide. Till they either decide they want to get help, or they decide, you know what, I'm not going to keep getting help. I'm just going to keep suffering. And believe it or not, a lot of people do that. But I think that everybody that you come in contact with, right, they have to play a supportive role in your life, regardless if you are having regardless if you are having questions about your own mental health or not. They have to play that supportive role in your life. Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned the generations. Why do you think it is that like Gen Z in particular might be, more likely to have a diagnosis of a mental health disorder, and also more likely to sort of be more open about it than, say, someone who grew up in the 80s or 90s?
I am going to say someone in the 80s or 90s growing up did not have a lot of the technology or the exposure to certain social media platforms and stuff like that versus what you have now. So now with all that exposure and stuff, you have a lot of people who are trying to have their life of the expectation of the influencer versus their actual selves. Versus in the 80s and the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, you didn't have that. You have some influencers, right? But not as big as it is now. So versus then, you kind of had to create your own way. You had to kind of start from the bottom and get on up. Versus now, you still got to start and, move and get things going for yourself. But a lot of times it's because they done seen someone do this and they done seen someone do that. And when they can't meet those expectations and everything, depression seeps in.
Yeah. And even coming from someone like me, how do I word the question? How do you sort of know the difference between the effect of the power of suggestion and seeing it in these influencers' lives? So I feel like I might, relate versus actually having the condition or mental health disorder. How can you really be able to tell the difference, or something sort of like that? Okay.
So I just want to make sure I understand.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to tell the difference if you have a mental health disorder versus you not having a mental health disorder? Yeah. I just want to make sure I understand.
Mm-hmm. The difference between actually relating to an influencer because of how common it is. The difference between relating to an influencer versus just the power of suggestion is the best way that I can put it. So if you see it everywhere, you see it in yourself, sort of a thing.
So I think there's nothing wrong with watching an influencer, right? There's nothing wrong, because some influencers have really good content and everything. So there's nothing wrong with that. However, when you start to, let's say you're watching someone who loves to travel, you might want to travel. However, if you don't right now at the current moment have the means to travel, but you're still doing it, and now you come back and now there's, things going on that you put yourself in a way that might be taking it a little over. Okay. They're very big on promoting certain types of makeup and perfumes and stuff. And you gotta have, oh, she just posted this, I gotta have this, I gotta get this and everything. But you do know that you aren't able to it, but you're gonna make a way to get it. That might be pushing it a little bit right there. So like I said, there's some influencers that promote a lot of mental health, physical health. There's nothing wrong with it, and even with those, it has to be within balance.
Would you like to tell us about the book you wrote?
Yes. Can I hold it up? Okay. So this is the book I wrote. It's called Brewing Success, Grounds for Change. And it's 20 tips in the book. And the tips are supposed to be read once a week. And then there's a reflection. There's reflection questions at the end for you to reflect on at the end of the week. But the reason why I wrote this book is because in the midst of my mental health journey, I was actually going through a cycle of the same situations over and over, like procrastination, self-care, grief. And I wanted to be able to share these tips of some things that helped me through. And even a lot of stuff in the book, I still go back to and reflect on, because we always need that reset, that reminder. So I decided to write this book because I wanted to share with other people the things that have helped me get by. Okay.
Yeah, would you like to give an example of one of them?
Sure. All right. So, just to explain a little bit about this book, I am a really big coffee drinker. So that's why you see the picture.
Yeah.
I am a really big coffee drinker, and so I try to blend the different types of coffee into the tips. Okay. Okay. So this is tip 6, vanilla latte. And I'm just going to read this little part right here. So this is about self-care. Self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. In a world that glorifies busyness, slowing down can sometimes feel like a guilty pleasure rather than a basic need. Taking time for yourself isn't selfish, it's essential for maintaining balance, energy, and mental clarity. For the longest time, I heard about self-care and read about activities that were supposed to be refreshing and rejuvenating. However, I quickly realized that the typical self-care routines, such as going to the hair salon, getting my nails done, or taking a bubble bath with candles, just wasn't my thing. Because I didn't resonate with these activities, I unconsciously avoided self-care altogether. That changed when I bought my son a guitar for Christmas. When he lost interest in learning to play, I decided to give it a try myself. Something about it intrigued me. It was different, and I found myself truly enjoying it. That's when I realized self-care doesn't have to fit into a specific mold. What works for one person may not work for another, and that's okay. If getting your hair and nails done is your thing, great, enjoy it, and embrace the relaxation. But if it's not, don't feel pressure to fit in to the traditional mold of self-care. So the reason why I put that tip in was because I am very energetic. I like learning new things. I like golfing, batting cages. I like all that stuff. My lovely friends, they like, the salon and stuff. And it's, like I said, nothing is wrong with that. But a lot of people do avoid self-care because of what they see on social media. And that's what they're believing, what is truly self-care. But self-care is whatever you enjoy doing that rejuvenates you and fills you back up.
Yeah, and I agree with that, of course. Of like, self-care is different for everybody. And, and I like... the anecdote too is like I wouldn't have resonated with the typical sort of self-care, and when I was younger I picked up an instrument, and I've played violin for about 10 years, guitar for about 4, and a couple of others, so I've really found a lot of peace in like music as well. But for those who might not even resonate with either, and they still feel like, oh, I don't really know how to get out of the busyness and how to get into a place of like peace and self-care. What is your advice to them for like how to slow down?
So my advice is always every day, take at least an hour. No TV, no social media, no nothing. And sit and think. Think about your future, think about your present moment, and just kind of think of where you want to go from there and everything. And then also, one thing that was very big with me was also remembering some things I loved to do in my childhood and everything. So some things I might have done when I was like 16 and 17 that brought me peace. I'm actually doing it now at XY year old, but I'm actually doing it now. So I do think that self-awareness, right? When you develop self-awareness, then that's when you develop the things that you like and things that you want to do, and what really calms your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I also think to like encourage to like try a lot of new things, which can seem like really nerve-wracking, getting out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
But like
Yes, it
trying
is.
to test out like what it is that
Yeah.
your passion is. And I also think of like I also think of like have you seen the movie Soul?
No.
Well, it's a Pixar movie, and it's sort of about this guy who he's trying to find out what his purpose is, and
Yeah.
there's like a sort of set of like in the afterlife there's like a set of stickers, and like it represents like what your thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I highly recommend the movie. I I watched it for the first time when I was like in a place where I was kind of in the same situation as the main character, so it was like really resonated with me. And I won't spoil, of course, but highly recommend it. Yeah.
Is this movie a type of movie? Is this a movie that you always go back to? You might watch
Mhm.
I have
Yeah.
my shows like that too. They just bring me peace, and every so often I'll just go back and watch them. And that's kind of what I'm saying about certain activities at an older age. You might sit back and think, at 17 and 18, I used to love enjoying this. Maybe I'll go back and give that a try and see how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, and with like older age, or like if I'm watching something when I'm 16 or 17, I might resonate with one part of the show, and then like when I get older and I have a different life experience, I'm like, oh, now I'm starting to notice this other aspect of it.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. I read a beautiful book by Joyce Myers. I'm not sure if you heard of Joyce Myers.
I think so.
She has a book called Beauty for Ashes. And that book is a book you can have for a lifetime, because every time you go back to read this book, you're going to get a different perspective out of it. Yeah.
What are some other like you kind of mentioned from your childhood, some maybe examples of like shows or maybe music or media that you really enjoyed when you were younger and still to this day? And
Okay, so when my mother sees this, she's going to bag up laughing at me. But one show that I always go back to watch is Monk.
I love Monk.
Is Monk. And it's like I said, I used to watch it when I was younger, and it's something that kind of does take me back to my happy place. Yeah.
Well, do you have any closing advice for the listeners?
The only closing advice I would have for everyone is keep showing up for yourself. Keep showing up for yourself. Be your number one fan. Be your cheerleader. Set the example for friends who may, is stuck too. But keep showing up for yourself.
All right. That's all I have for today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate all you guys.
Thanks for listening. De-Stress 302 is a Cause of the World production. This program was produced by members of the Cause production crew. Crew includes Milan Wood, Alana Hernandez. Associate producers are Adam Hubert and Alena Duggan. Produced by Matt Kelly. Our executive producers are Hayat Omar and Dennis Finicaro. This show was brought to you by the 988 Lifeline in Delaware and the Cause. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, alcohol or drug use, is in emotional distress, or just needs someone to talk to, contact 988. 988's trained, caring counselors are ready to listen. Call, text, or chat 988 for free and confidential support, 24/7, 365. You are not alone. Subscribe to De-Stress 302 today.